Hi, happy full moon lunar eclipse. I don't know about you, but for me, this eclipse season has been a little like disorienting, if you will. And I am a Virgo, so in Western astrology, and I like love data. I love like tracking things. And so I've been tracking myself and different habits and things over the last like 2 years. And it's interesting to look back on last year around this eclipse season and how similar my patterns were then as they are right now. And it's just, for me, it's just felt like I've just been kind of like in this portal, like, and not really understanding what's happening yet. And that's just like very eclipse energy. And so today, August 27th, 2026, is a full moon, lunar eclipse. You can really think of this as kind of a threshold of release, revelation, and a sacred reorientation, if you will. So this evening, the full moon will begin slipping into the Earth's shadow. Now, by the time the eclipse reaches its peak, it's technically a partial lunar eclipse. It's about 96.3-ish% of the moon's disk will be covered by the darkest part of that shadow, making this technically a partial lunar eclipse that might appear almost total, with much of the moon taking on kind of this really deep copper red glow. And here in Omaha and throughout the central time zone, the eclipse will begin approximately around 8:24 this evening. And the visible partial phase will begin about 9:34 p.m., again, Central Standard Time. And the eclipse will reach its maximum at approximately 11:13 p.m. tonight. Now, the partial phase will end around 12:52 a.m., technically Friday, with the final shadow really fading shortly after probably like the 2 a.m. hour. And so, astronomically, what's happening, right? A lunar eclipse can only occur at a full moon. And that's when the sun, the earth, and the moon align closely enough for the earth's shadow to fall across the lunar surface. So, astrologically, eclipses have been long understood as interpretations in the ordinary flow of light. So, thresholds that reveal what has been obscured, accelerate a turning point, or bring an existing story toward culmination. So, this particular eclipse closes the season that was opened with the total solar eclipse, new moon, on August 12th. What kind of began in darkness then may become visible now. So, what was seeded, disrupted, or awakened may now ask to be felt, integrated, and or released. And this is not necessarily a night to force an answer, but rather it's a night to become quiet enough to notice what can no longer remain unseen. I feel like for me, like I felt so clouded and just kind of like disoriented these last 2 weeks while we've been in this kind of eclipse tunnel. And that's exactly what it feels like right now. It's like the full moon is illuminating all of the things that can no longer remain unseen. And the shadow does not always arrive to take something from us. Sometimes it arrives so we can finally see what the brightness would not allow us to perceive. So, through the Western Hellenistic lens, this is a full moon across Pisces and Virgo. So in Hellenistic Western astrology, we use the tropical zodiac. And in the tropical zodiac, this eclipse perfects with the moon at approximately 4 degrees Pisces, opposite the sun at approximately 4 degrees Virgo. Okay, so stay with me. Pisces is a mutable water sign, traditionally ruled by the planet Jupiter. It speaks to permeability, surrender, faith, imagination, grief, compassion, dreams, and the places where our individual boundaries soften into something much larger. Now, Virgo is also a mutable sign, but it's an earth sign, and it's traditionally ruled by the planet Mercury. So it speaks to discernment, craft, service, the body, daily ritual, organization, and the careful separation of what nourishes from what does not. So, this polarity is not asking us to choose spirit over structure or surrender over discernment. It's asking us to repair the relationship between them. Where have we become so open that we have lost our center? Where have we become so controlled that the mystery can no longer reach us? Where has devotion become avoidance? Where has discernment become criticism? What needs to dissolve, and what practical container will allow that release to become meaningful? From a Hellenistic ancient perspective, this is a mutable or double-bodied axis. So mutable signs, they often describe transitions, adaptations, and conditions already in motion. This eclipse may not represent one isolated event as much as the visible crest of a change that's been developing beneath the surface. So something may already be shifting. And the eclipse just simply reveals the depth of that movement. Because the moon is in Jupiter's sign and the sun is in Mercury's sign, Jupiter and Mercury also become incredibly important stewards of this entire eclipse story. Symbolically, Jupiter asks what we believe, what gives life meaning, and where we're being called to grow. Mercury asks us to name, sort, examine, translate what we are discovering into choices we can actually live. So symbolically, Jupiter asks what we believe, what gives life meaning, and where we're being called to grow. And Mercury asks us to name, sort, examine, translate what we are discovering into choices we can actually live. So this is where revelation must meet integration. Feeling something deeply is not the same as embodying it. Understanding a pattern intellectually is not the same as changing it. The Pisces Virgo axis invites us to let the sacred become practical, a boundary, a conversation, a new rhythm, a cleaner commitment, or a practice we return to each day. Sadhana is a beautiful thing to start now. Sadhana is traditionally a spiritual practice of some sort that you return to every single day. Now, that can be yoga, running, weightlifting, meditating, breath work, like it walking, Pilates, like it can be whatever, but it's something that you return to each day. And this Pisces Virgo access is really inviting us to let the sacred become practical. And so Pisces really teaches us how to surrender, and Virgo teaches us how to tend what remains. And together, they really ask us to create a life that is spacious enough for mystery, but structured enough to support our healing. Now, the larger Western sky, strict Hellenistic astrology works with only the seven visible traditional planets, and it does not include the three outer planets. And in particular, it does not include Uranus. And in this kind of, if we put this modern Western layer on top of this Hellenistic lens, Uranus is in early Gemini and it forms kind of this tense square to the Sun Moon opposition. So, what does this mean? This creates a mutable T square and adds an atmosphere of disruption, of awakening, of nervous system stimulation, and rapid change. So, information may arrive suddenly, plans may shift, an unexpected conversation may change your understanding of something. A truth may become impossible to keep editing around. The mind may feel fast while the emotional body is still trying to catch up. Uranus does not always destroy what is stable. Sometimes it destabilizes what has already become too small, rigid, or disconnected from truth. Yet, not every intense feeling is a prophecy. Right. And not every sudden realization requires an immediate response. Pause, pause, pause before sending the message, before ending the relationship, before making the purchase, or before declaring the final answer. Pause. Let revelation move through your body before turning it into action. The eclipse may deliver the insight in a moment, but the embodiment of that insight can take weeks or months. So, although the eclipse is happening this evening, we really won't see the fruits of this eclipse for days, weeks, months throughout the rest of the year, really. Now, if we look at this through the Vedic lens, we've got Aquarius, Shatabhisha, and the medicine of the 100 healers. So, using the sidereal zodiac, this is Vedic Jyotish astrology. This eclipsed moon falls near Aquarius in the nakshatra Shatabhisha, And it's opposite the sun, who's near Leo in the Magha Nakshatra. What does this all mean? Let me tell you. This, my friends, changes the language of the eclipse while preserving similar underlying invitations. So the healing of what has become fragmented, the purification of what has been concealed, and the reorientation of the individual within the greater field. Shatabhisha is the nakshatra known as the 100 healers. And that's what it's often translated to, or the 100 physicians. Its symbol is a circle, at once a boundary, a vessel, a protective enclosure, and an image of wholeness. Its presiding deity is Varuna, who is the guardian of cosmic order, of sacred law, of truth, and of the vast celestial waters. Its planetary ruler is Rahu, and Rahu is the shadow graha associated with hunger, with amplification, with disruption, obsession, unconventional paths, and experiences that exceed the mind's ordinary categories. Shatabhisha can reveal the place that needs medicine, but its medicine is not always soft. It may first expose what has been hidden, maybe denied, overextended, or isolated. Its healing can require solitude, like radical fucking honesty, research, maybe unconventional approaches, and the willingness to stop pretending that fragmentation is wholeness. An eclipse here may amplify questions such as, what is the real wound beneath the coping mechanisms? This question for me could not be more like personal at this exact moment during this eclipse season. Like, what is the real fucking wound beneath the coping mechanism? And like, where has isolation protected me? And where has it become my own form of suffering? What truth must be honored for like genuine healing to begin? And which boundary restores wholeness rather than reinforcing separation? And like, what am I ready to approach differently? Because the old remedy is no longer reaching the root. Aquarius is traditionally ruled by Saturn, and it turns our attention toward systems, communities, collective responsibilities, and the long work of creating structures that can hold more than the individual self. And Aquarius is the water bearer. And so the moon, you can think of as like the mind, feeling nature, and an inner sense of safety. And the moon is moving through Saturn's terrain well under this eclipse, according to Vedic astrology. This can feel sobering, it can feel detached, restless, and emotionally exposing. I'm like, check, 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 check. We may want to withdraw because the emotions feel too large, maybe too complicated, or maybe even difficult to explain. Yet, this placement can also show us, rather help us witness a pattern with enough distance to stop being consumed by it. Shatabhisha reminds us that healing does not always mean returning to the person we were before something broke. And sometimes healing asks us to gather the pieces and then create a new form, one that does not hide the places where life changed us. Now, the sun and Magha, this lineage, authority, and ancestral seat. So, across from the moon in the sky, the sun falls in Leo in the nakshatra of Magha. And this is a Ketu ruled nakshatra that's associated with ancestors, lineage, inheritance, dignity, and the seat of authority. Magha asks us to remember what came before us, but not to unconsciously repeat it. So the eclipse, therefore, stretches between Shatabhisha's collective medicine and Maga's ancestral throne. We may be examining what we inherited, what we have been loyal to, and what the role we have continued to perform because it once earned belonging, safety, approval. And some inheritances are blessings to like tend to. Others are patterns asking to end with us. We can love where we came from without repeating every part of it. We can honor our ancestors while choosing a different future. We can feel gratitude for what our lineage gave us while acknowledging the wounds, beliefs, and survival strategies we are no longer willing to carry forward. So, with the moon in a Rahu ruled nakshatra and the sun in a Ketu ruled nakshatra, both luminaries are held in the symbolism of the lunar nodes. Rahu pulls toward experience, hunger, intensification, where Ketu serves, empties, and reveals what no longer contains life. Together, they can make the eclipse feel karmic, not as a punishment or as like a fixed destiny, but rather as a concentrated encounter with cause, pattern, and consequence. The patterns we repeatedly participate in eventually become the conditions of our lives. So, this eclipse invites us to interpret the pattern before it becomes another inheritance. What you may notice. Eclipses are not guaranteed catastrophes. I think we've learned to, or been conditioned to over the years and decades, to fear eclipses. And they're not these guaranteed catastrophes. And astrology does not replace discernment, healthcare, or practical decision making. Their symbolism may appear internally, externally, collectively, or subtly. So you may notice heightened dreams, intuition or emotional sensitivity, fatigue, restlessness or sensory overload, an old grief or unfinished feeling returning to be witnessed, sudden clarity about a habit, relationship, or identity that has run its course, tension between surrendering and trying to control the outcome, a desire for solitude, silence, or stronger boundaries, information that changes how you understand a longer story, a call to translate spiritual insight into a tangible daily practice. Questions around belonging, community, inherited expectations, and the role you are ready to release. A feeling that something is ending, even if you cannot name what will replace it. If you have like natal placements in your chart that are angles or planets like near 0 to 9 degrees of the mutable tropical signs. So the mutable tropical signs are Pisces, Virgo, Gemini, Sagittarius. You may experience the Western eclipse pattern more personally. And now in your sidereal chart, the placements near the middle of Aquarius or Leo may be especially sensitized. And that's why it's super important to work with an astrologer that can help you kind of break down your chart. And I can do that. There's so many other incredible astrologers out there. But if you haven't had your chart read, Western or Vedic, or both together, if possible, would be amazing. That's what I do. Certain astrologers kind of specialize in one or the other, and I'm just so fascinated with both. And I think there's so much wisdom to be had in both and weaving them together. And so it's super important, and it's something that maybe this eclipse season will encourage or influence you to do is to like get to know your own personal chart a little bit better. But really, the houses that contain Pisces, Virgo in your tropical chart or the Leo, Aquarius in your sidereal chart, they really show the areas in your life where this story may be unfolding. Like there's so much depth, there's so much nuance, there's so many layers to astrology on a collective level and an individual level. And so if it's something that you're fascinated with, I highly recommend. And like I said, maybe this eclipse season will be the thing that gets you to dive even deeper. I mean, Pisces is like a deep, deep, deep emotional dive into the self, and the Virgo is like this, meticulous, decisive, organized energy. And then you've got Aquarius, which is kind of like this rebel of the zodiac, and Leo, which is the kind of like shine performer. Like there's a lot fucking going on right now. And to understand it with more depth is very interesting. And I also think incredibly helpful and beneficial. But you do not need to understand every detail of your birth chart to work with this moment. Your life is already showing you where the energy is moving. Notice what becomes louder. Notice what keeps repeating. Notice what you are exhausted from carrying. And notice where your body has already begun saying no. How long will this eclipse work for us? The days immediately surrounding an eclipse can feel emotionally loud, but informationally incomplete. Think of the eclipse itself as the revelation or rupture, not necessarily the resolution. So, right now, the days surrounding the eclipse, lower the volume, create margin. Notice what surfaces without demanding that it make immediate sense. Avoid turning temporary nervous system activation into permanent decisions whenever possible. Over the next couple of days, let the first work be witnessing. This is a time to listen more than you speak, to feel more than you fix, and to observe more than you force. You may not need another ritual, another reading, or another person's interpretation, although it can be helpful. You might simply just need enough stillness to hear yourself. Now, the following weeks, as the moon wanes, release becomes more tangible. We edit our commitments. We clear physical and digital space. Refine boundaries. Tend unfinished conversations. Gently withdraw energy from what has already completed itself. This does not need to be dramatic. Remember that release might mean unsubscribing, changing a routine, taking a break, asking for help, going to bed earlier, returning an item, canceling a commitment, or maybe finally acknowledging that something is no longer aligned. Small choices teach the body that change is safe. Now, the following 3 to 6 months, eclipse themes often unfold in chapters. Watch for developments around the same topics, relationships, or decisions. Record what happens now so you can recognize the thread later. The deeper question is not simply what ended, it is what way of being can no longer accompany me into the life that is emerging. The eclipse may initiate a release, but the real transformation happens through the practices the boundaries, and the decisions that follow. So, what's the yogic teaching in this eclipse? The teaching is that practice is the container. Yoga reminds us that liberation is not created by bypassing the human experience. It is cultivated by meeting experience with steadiness, self-study, and non-grasping. So this eclipse carries a potent conversation between svidhyaya, self-study, and a parigraha, the non-clinging. So svidhyaya, self-study, asks us to observe the pattern honestly. The role we play, the story we repeat, the sensations we avoid. And a parigraha, this is the like non-attachment, non-clinging. And a parigraha asks whether we can loosen our grip, not because what happened did not matter, but because gripping is no longer the same as honoring. Your practice does not need to be intense to be transformative. And in fact, eclipse energy may be better met through slower, grounding movement rather than a practice designed to produce another peak experience. Choose long exhalations, supported forward folds, gentle twists, child's pose, my favorite, legs up the wall, my other favorite, yoga nidra. These are all really beautiful practices that you can do right now. Let your body metabolize what the mind cannot yet explain. The point is not to perfect the posture, but rather the point is to create enough inner space to hear what's true. Now, Ayurveda teaches to protect the inner waters. Ayurveda does not reduce every person to one universal eclipse response. Your constitution, your current imbalances, the season, your life circumstances, and your nervous system capacity all matter. Still, the heightened changeability, sensitivity, and disruption surrounding an eclipse can aggravate vata. And vata is the dosha of air, ether, space, movement, and of the nervous system. So Pisces and Shatabhisha, they also bring this strong water and healing symbolism. Well, the Virgo Pisces polarity can draw attention to digestion, not only how we digest food, but how we digest emotion, information, and experience. Support yourself with warmth, regularity, and simplicity. So think eating warm, cooked, and familiar foods rather than turning the eclipse into a cleanse or a punishment. Favor soups, stews, cooked grains, root vegetables, ghee, and other nourishing oils appropriate for your body and your constitution. I think it's incredibly important for every human being to understand their birth chart, both Western and Vedic. I also think it's incredibly vital for every human to understand their doshic constitution. And there are thousands of quizzes that you can take online by yourself, and those are really great and give you kind of this like general idea of the potential. But it's actually super important to get your constitution determined by an actual Ayurvedic practitioner because there's really two routes to, there's kind of two parts of your constitution. You have your prakriti, which is your overall dosha constitution that you were born with, and then you have what's called your vikriti, and this is your current state of doshic imbalance. And so it's really important to understand your doshic constitution and your current state of imbalances so you can use the appropriate tools Ayurvedically for your body, mind, soul, spirit. And so during this eclipse season and even the days, weeks following, take care of yourself. Sip warm water or maybe even like a gentle tea, ginger, tulsi, Ayurveda's famous CCF, cumin, coriander, fennel. If those herbs, again, suit your constitution. If you can, reduce alcohol, excessive caffeine, doom scrolling, and overstimulating conversations. Massage warm oil into your feet before bed. And protect your sleep. And keep the following morning spacious if you can. And that might mean waking up earlier. If your emotions feel hot, sharp, judgmental, or reactive, pitta, fire, water, pitta dosha may also be present here. And I wouldn't be surprised if it is, because we are in the end of Pitta season, starting to transition into Vata season. And so there might be an over excessive amount of Pitta Vata, which is so great that this full moon eclipse westernly is in Pisces, Virgo, because Pisces is water, Virgo is earth. So it's kapha. It's this grounding energy that we need right now. If you have too much pitta, too much fire, cool the impulse to immediately fix, confront, or control. If heaviness becomes immobilizing, Kapha may benefit from really gentle movement, from fresh air, sunlight, and loving connection. So let this weekend be just that: warm, grounding, connective, soft, slow. Remember that Ayurveda teaches us to respond to what is actually here, not to impose the same ritual on everybody. So what works for me most likely won't work for you. And that's why Ayurveda is so great because it's this beautiful kind of self-discovery of who you are and how you function best right now in this moment. And this eclipse season is really asking you to kind of like redirect your energy away from the things that are depleting you and towards the things that are giving you more light, life, vitality, radiance, brilliance, fullness. Now, the Kundalini teaching here is that intensification is not the same as clarity. The Kundalini practice teaches us that energy amplifies whatever it moves through. So more energy is not automatically more wisdom. Without grounding and discernment, intensity can very quickly become agitation, projection, or spiritual urgency. And during an eclipse, we choose to regulate before elevation. So we choose regulation grounding, rootedness before we expand and elevate. So rather than pushing powerful breath retention, rapid breath work, or an unfamiliar Kriya, maybe consider a practice you already know and trust. Lengthening the exhale, chanting softly. Sit with your hands at your heart and your belly and feel, like literally feel your relationship to the ground. And you can try this really simple practice by sitting comfortably with your spine supported if needed. Inhaling through your nose for a count of 4 and gently exhaling for a count of 6. Continue for 3 up to 11 minutes if you can without strain. And then after, sit in silence and notice sensation before interpretation. Because the question is not how much energy can I generate? The question is how safely and consciously can I inhabit what is already moving through me? Now, the tantric teaching is that nothing is excluded from the sacred. Tantra invites us out of the fantasy that only the bright, the beautiful, and the easily understood parts of our life are sacred. The shadow is not outside of consciousness. Grief is not outside practice. Anger, uncertainty, desire, endings, and fear are not failures of devotion. They are energies asking to be met without unconscious identification or rejection. The eclipse offers us a living image of this teaching. The moon is not destroyed when its light disappears. The moon is not destroyed when its light disappears. It is just temporarily obscured. Wholeness remains, even if we cannot perceive it. A tantric embodiment asks us to stay present with sensation as energy. Instead of immediately creating a story around the tightness in the chest, the heat in the face, or the heaviness in the belly, can you feel its texture, its movement, its edge? Can you breathe without demanding that the sensation leave? To embody does not mean to indulge every impulse. It means becoming intimate enough with your inner experience that you are no longer unconsciously governed by it. The shadow does not need to be conquered. It needs to be brought into conscious relationship. When we attempt to conquer our shadow, shame enters. I'm ashamed of what I did. Embarrassment. I don't want anyone to know that I did something like that or was capable of something like that. And in Ayurveda and Sanskrit, what is created there is called ama. It's toxin. It's digested experience because we're not bringing it up into the light. And this eclipse is really asking us to bring the light and the dark together in conscious relationship. So, how can we even work with all of this? You can reflect, journal, like what truth has been circling the edges of my awareness that I'm finally ready to name? Where have I confused surrender with avoidance, or maybe control with safety? What's an inherited role, loyalty, or expectation that I'm ready to honor rather than automatically repeat? What part of my life is asking for both compassion and a clear boundary? And if this ending is creating sacred space, what daily practice will help me protect and embody what's emerging? A couple rituals to embody this eclipse. You can do it tonight. You can do it over the next couple of days, next couple of weeks. This ritual is called the vessel of release. So you can fill a bowl with water and place it on your altar or like your mantle or somewhere special that holds significance. And the bowl of water is really a symbol of the emotional body, not as water to consume or charge, but more as a temporary vessel of reflection. Write what you're ready to release on small slips of paper. Read one aloud each, and then place your hands around the bowl and breathe slowly. After the eclipse, pour the water into the earth and tear or recycle the paper. This is a really simple ritual, so keep it simple. But the power here is your raw honesty. This kind of Shatabhisha healing circle, if you will. You'll draw a circle on a page, and inside of that circle, write what belongs within your care. So, your body, your practice, truth, responsibilities, chosen relationships. And then on the outside of that circle, write what you've been carrying that's not yours to control. Let the circle become a compassionate boundary rather than a wall. So you can ask yourself, what does this boundary protect? What does it allow? And what energy becomes available when I stop carrying what was never mine? A ritual on lineage, a blessing and a burden. You can place maybe a photograph, an heirloom, or a simple candle on your altar or somewhere special to honor those who came before you. And take a journal page and divide it into two columns. Column one, what I carry forward with me, and column two, what ends with me. Name the gifts you choose to tend and the patterns you are no longer willing to repeat. And then close with gratitude without forcing forgiveness or denying harm. And you might say something along these lines to yourself of like, I honor the life that moved through those before me. And I carry forward the wisdom, the resilience, and the love that support life. And I release the patterns that no longer belong in the future that I'm creating. The grounded moon practice. This is a like 10 to 20 minute of slow, familiar movement. So maybe it's cat cow, child's pose, low lunge, supported forward folds, supine twist, maybe legs up the wall. I have a really beautiful yin practice that I recorded last night that I think would be really helpful. And I will post the link to that class in the notes. But it was a really beautiful practice that I designed to almost mimic the opposition in the sky. And I think it would be really helpful to do under this eclipse in the days, weeks, and months to come. While you're practicing, keep your gaze soft and your breath unforced. And allow yourself to finish with one hand at your heart, one hand at your belly, and really ask yourself, what does safety feel like in my body? And you don't have to search for the perfect answer. Just allow yourself to simply notice sensation and whatever arises. Now, mantra into silence here. You can choose a mantra from your own lineage or practice. You might use so hum that translates to I am that, with the so internally chanted on the inhale and the hum internally chanted on the exhale. You could even chant out loud. So on the inhale, hum on the exhale, and you can repeat this for 108 breaths or for 11 minutes, and then stop. Sit in the silence that follows. Let the mantra gather the mind, and let the silence reveal what does not need language. A sacred pause for the eclipse. You do not need to manifest harder beneath this full moon. You do not need to make the shadow beautiful before you're willing to sit beside it. You do not need to know exactly what comes next. Let this eclipse be a threshold rather than a deadline. Rest, listen, record what arises, tend your body. Let insight arrive in layers. And in the days that follow, choose one grounded action that honors what you now know. And in the weeks that follow, notice what begins to reorganize. And in the months that follow, return to this moment and ask whether the life you are building reflects the truth that was revealed. The moon will leave Earth's shadow. The light will return. But we are not always meant to return to who we were before the dark. Sometimes the sacred work of an eclipse is to show us that we were whole even when we could not see ourselves clearly, and to ask us to live from that remembering.